What's going on, guys? Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about Linux local enumeration, which is a room focused on performing manual enumeration on any Linux machine after you have got access during your penetration test. So basically this machine or this room is kind of prerequisite to a very well-known room named Linux privilege escalation. So if you're tackling down this room, I recommend you guys to do first this room, local enumeration, and then do local privileged escalation. And they have a complete walkthrough on Linux privilege escalation capstone about this room. It's a very long room. If you need a help or a walkthrough, you can check out the video. Now let's jump to this video. So basically here, guys, local enumeration is a way to enumerate local attack vectors on a Linux machine. You can do that manually, or you can do that automatically using tools or automated tools. So basically we do local enumeration as a phase before we conduct the privileged escalation. There are multiple methods to perform local enumeration. The methods mentioned in this room are not comprehensive and don't represent all of the methods out there. There is always methods to uncover weaknesses in a system. Alright, so what we're going to do here, guys, we're going to use the attack box. Okay. Now the first thing I'm going to do, guys, is launch Firefox, have the IP address of the machine, navigate to port 3000, and here, okay, so before jumping into that, let's first grab a copy of the IP address of this machine. All right, so here it is. Now, if you go back to the browser, let's see here. So this is the main page. Now, here you're not required to perform any sort of website or web server scanning or web vulnerability scanning. It is very clear, guys. You have two methods to gain access to the machine. The first one is to navigate to CMD file on the web server or to upload your own. So basically, if you navigate to /cmd.php, as you can see, there is an input box where you can type in your preferred reverse shell. Now the recommended method here is to use PHP so that you get a connection back to your machine. Now let's go to /cmd. Okay, I'm going to go my notes, grab a copy of a PHP one-liner. So I think the one recommended in the challenge is this one. So let's take a copy of this and go back to the input box. Don't forget to grab a copy of the IP address here of your machine. In my case, it is the attack box IP address. I'm going to go back, and here we're going to change the existing IP address with the new IP address, and the port is optional. It is preferential. You can choose your own port based on your preferences. So 4545 for me. And before I execute this, I'm going to go back and launch a listener on port 4545. This listener will catch the connection I'm going to initiate. So go back here, and now enter. We jump back to the command line, and as you can see, we received the connection. Now, usually, guys, that's the first step. When you get, that's the first step in any sort of privileged escalation. First, you need an access to the target machine. Okay, we need to have partial access as when it comes to the privileges. So now, as you can see, if we issue ID or execute ID, as you can see, we are the user manager. So we are non-privileged user. Now, this user might have some privileges. As you can see, it's part of sudo, but it is not the root user. So the objective of any privileged escalation is to escalate to the highest privileged user. Now in this room, we're not going to perform privileged escalation. We're going to perform the necessary steps needed that help us in performing or achieving privileged escalation. We call that local enumeration. So local enumeration is the process of obtaining as much information as possible about the system, the processes, the network connections, the cron jobs, the users, if possible, the passwords, the hashes, configuration files, backups, anything that would help us uncover any kind of weakness in the system. Alright, so the first step uncovered in this task, uncovered in this room is, as you can see, we have to stabilize the shell. So stabilizing the shell is very important if you want to perform complex operations like copy, paste, between multiple commands at multiple terminals at the same time, as well as performing su and sudo. You have to have a stable shell. So one of the methods is to use a TTY. So we're going to copy that and paste it here. And now we have a more stable shell, as you can see. All right, so the answer to this question, how would you execute bin bash with payroll? So that's the answer. How you can find the answer, you can simply navigate to GTFO bins. So GTFO bins, and type payroll reverse shell, and this is it. Now just replace sh with bash and you will get the answer. All right, next step is to use SSH. So basically, sometimes TTY doesn't work. So if TTY doesn't work, in order to stabilize the shell, we might resort to using SSH access. So if you don't have credentials for a specific user on the target machine to use them to log in to the SSH server, you're gonna have to generate a key pair on your own machine and then transfer the public key into the authorized keys on the target machine. So the first step here, let's go back. This is not covered in the room, but I'm going to cover this here. So open a new terminal. Let's open a new tab, it's better. So new tab, make this bigger. All right, so SSH key generation, we generate a pair of public and private key. The passphrase is optional, but it's recommended for security purposes to create a passphrase. Now, because we are doing a CTF challenge, it is not necessary. So we're going to skip that. And as you can see, the public key has been saved under root, SSH, ID RSA, and the private key has been saved here. Now, as long as we have access to the machine, what we're going to do, we're going to navigate to this path. Sorry, this path. We're gonna have to navigate there. Okay, and get the content of the public key. This is the contents of the public key. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to copy that, okay, and we navigate to the target machine. We're going to locate the same directory we located on my machine, which is the username.ssh. So the username here is, as you can see, it's manager. So if you go to home, now we have one directory for the current user, SUID manager ls-la. So let's look for the directory named .ssh. So we go to ssh. Oh, okay. So as you can see, there is no directory called or a file called authorized keys. Okay. This means we cannot add my public key to the authorized keys file on the target machine, which means I cannot access or I cannot have an SSH access to the machine. Ideally, you should find this file in any target machine that you may access. Okay, but this is not covered in the scenario. Okay, guys. However, you should have understood the process. You just have to copy the key here and locate the authorized key file, paste the contents in there, and then what you have to do, you have to log in to the target server with your private key located at this path. So if you don't know the command to log in with a private key, it is ssh-i idrsa, and then you have to use the username at the target server and the IP address. This way you can log in to the target server after you have copied your public key to the authorized keys file on the target machine. All right, so let's see the question here. Where can you usually find the ID RSA file? IDRSA is the private SSH key file. And previously we saw that when we generated the key pairs, one of them or both of them have been saved under the username, the current username I am logged in with, and the directory named SSH. So it would go like that, home. Now here, because I'm logged in as root, but if you're not logged in as root, it's going to be saved under the home directory of the current user. Slash user, because the username is, it's assumed that it is a user, and then the SSH directory and the IDRSA. That's the path of the private key file under this scenario. Is there an IDRSA file on the box? No, there is no file, or there is no key pair on the target machine, as you can see here, nothing. Okay, so two methods to have a stable access to the machine. First, we have the TTY, or we can use SSH. All right, basic enumeration. Let's first answer the questions, and then I'm gonna tell you guys how to perform the basic local enumeration. How would you print machine hardware name only? All right, so now we start the local enumeration. The first step in local enumeration is to acquire or to have a look at the system information. So we used uname -a. This would display the system information, including the OS, the version, and the architecture, as you can see here. Now the question is asking how we can obtain only the hardware information, meaning the architecture. So it is uname -a. This would uname -m. This would display only the architecture. Okay, where can you find bash history? All right, so bash history is a file that contains the history of all of the executed commands by the user. So if we locate this file, ls-la, normally it comes under the home directory of the user if it is not privileged user. As you can see, we have these files, bash rc and bash history. Now bash history, as I said earlier, it contains all of the executed commands by the user, and it is very beneficial to check out this file if you are conducting privileged escalation, because you might come across sensitive information like passwords, usernames. Usernames are not considered sensitive information, but it can be considered as supplemental information to your investigation or to your pen test. Passwords, usernames, keys, hashes, whatever. So let's cut this file and see the contents. This is the contents of the file. Okay, as you can see, it contains all of the executed commands by the user. Okay, now here is the flag required to answer the question. This one. All right, let's check out the other file. The other file is bash rc. Now bash rc also contains the history of all of the commands executed by user in the bash. So cat bash rc only under the bash session. Okay, that's for this task. Now sometimes when we get access to a system, we want to find out what are the privileges of the current user. In this case, it is manager. We want to see what manager can do in a privileged mode. Means what manager can do in terms of sudo. So what commands they can do as sudo. So sudo -l. The password for manager, guess like I don't have the password. Let me check. We don't have the password for the username manager, that's why it's not going to work. But with sudo -l, you're going to be able to check out what kind of commands, or what are the commands that manager or the username manager can execute in a privileged mode. This is very useful if you want to execute certain, if you want to exploit certain binaries and run them as root. Sudo -l. Okay. Now I have listed all of the, if I go to the document here, Linux privileged escalation, I have listed all of the manual methods used in enumeration and privileged escalation, including viewing system and kernel information. the pseudo version, the groups and users, so on and so forth. You can check them out if you are part of the channel membership. Now also enumerating the pseudo version is important because some pseudo versions are vulnerable to CVEs, like this one. 1.8.29.28 was vulnerable to CVE 2019, where you can exploit sudo to gain access to the root user. So it's very important and beneficial to check out the version of the current sudo. So it is version 1.8.29.p2. Now if you want to continue further with your privilege escalation, you can just Google this or use exploit database to find out if there is an exploit for this version. Okay, now on to the next task, etc. To the questions, can you read the etc password on the box? Cat etc password. Yes, we can. So the answer is yes. So what's the purpose of this question? So basically, the etc/etc/password is the file that contains information about the users. As you can see, if we can display the contents of this file, we will be able to obtain information about the current existing users on the system. This is very beneficial if you want to conduct brute force and find out or crack the hashes of certain users. As you can see, the root account, we have the root account. As you can see, X means that the password is encrypted. It cannot be displayed here. It is stored under /etc/shadow, which we will be covering in a bit. 0, the UID, the GID, and here is the name, and we have the shell. So once you see /bin/bash, it means that the root user can log in and have a shell as bash. If you see /user/sbin no login, it means that the login has been disabled for that user. And we mentioned in the previous video where we talked about Linux security best practices, we said that it is very recommended to disable logins for certain users, such as the service accounts like .data. It shouldn't have the shell login shell enabled, and other users that you have deleted or disabled from your system. That's the job of the etc password. Also, it's worth checking out another file, cat etc shadow. This is the file that contains the hashes, but some of the hashes cannot be displayed here, like the hashes of the username manager, of the user manager. But if you don't need to have the hashes mentioned here, you can grab a copy of etc shadow and grab a copy of the etc password file, have them over to your machine and crack them with John the Ripper. I'm not going to cover this in this video because it's not the subject of this video. But what I'm going to tell you guys, what I'm telling you is, if you don't see passwords here, it's not over. Just copy these files to your machine, this file and other one, the password file to your machine, and crack them with John the Ripper. You'll be able to crack most of the hashes and find out the passwords of the users if they are in the dictionary of the word list you are using. Okay, now, but if you go up, as you can see, the root user is the same. No, it's not here. Let's scroll down a bit. I think it's crowded. Let's clear. Cat etc shadow and grep roots. Permission denied. Oh, okay. So I was mixing up etc shadow with password. Sorry for that. But as you can see, permission denied. I cannot display the contents of the shadow file. Let's check out the permissions of the shadow file. So as you can see, the shadow file is owned by root, okay, and the group shadow. If we check out the groups and a grep manager, group. Okay, so manager is part of the manager group, but they are not part of the shadow group. Going back to shadow, that's why we couldn't display the contents of the shadow file, because we are neither part of the shadow group, or we are the shadow, or we are the root user. So that's why we couldn't display the contents of the shadow file. Okay. Next one, find command and interesting files. Okay, we're gonna talk about this. What's the password you found? All right. So after we checked out the sensitive files in the system, including the password file, the shadow file, and we covered or we unveiled information about the system. We can also talk about the processes and the network connections. After you have done all of that, now it's time to look for sensitive files. Sensitive files are files that contain plain text, passwords, caches, or keys. These files are likely to be configuration files, log files, or backup files. In order to find these files, we're gonna have to use the find command. So find, and then we're gonna type the directory where or in which we're going to search. So you can type slash to include all the file system. Dash type file, we're looking for a file, dash name, and here we're going to use the asterisk dot conf, okay, to, so what does this command do? So dash type F indicates we're looking for a file, dash name specifies the name of the file. Now look at the name of the file. I used asterisk, which means I'm interested to find all the files regardless of their names, okay, no matter what comes before the .conf. What's important is to display all of the files that have conf as an extension. So this one has a typo here. Okay, let's see here. So we have all of these files are as configuration files. As you can see, guys, after a bit of waiting, we found that there is a file named flag.conf. If we cut the contents of this file, you can uncover the flag. All right, so the other question, what's the password we found? Now, basically, to find this password, we have to look in another type of file. So basically here we looked for configuration files. Now I have to look for backup files. Usually backup files contain such information, passwords, hashes, or keys. So if we modify this command, we're gonna copy the exact same command up until here, and we're gonna change the extension. Backup files come with BAK as an extension. And then we're going to use this to hide any errors. Okay. Execute that, and we have these files. So usually these files contain backup copies of the shadow, password, the group, shadow, and group. We have this file, var opt passwords. If we cut the contents of this file, usually it's very clear that this file is a file that contains sensitive passwords, sensitive information. So cat, and this is the password. So as you can see from this example, looking for configuration files, backup files, or even log files can aid in your privilege escalation attempts, and most probably will uncover sensitive information such as passwords, hashes, keys, etc. and the story won't end. Okay, so the SUID. Okay, the SUID bit. So basically, in a nutshell, the SUID bit set is, as you can see, a type of permission that allows users to execute a file with the permissions of another user. So let's demonstrate that with an example. So let's copy this command. This is the command used to find the SUID bit binaries. So we look across the whole file system. We specify dash permissions because SUID bit set is a bit assigned to permissions. So we specify the flag dash perm to indicate we are looking to filter using permissions. Dash u equal s for the SUID bit set. Dash type is a file, and then we go. As you can see, we have many binaries where they have the SUID bit set. The question here is, what's the binary that you can use to escalate the privileges on the box? All right, so it is actually grep. Where is grep? So grep doesn't exist. Now that's unusual. Oh, it's up there. So basically it is somewhere. I'm thinking I'm torturing myself. Let's use this command. I'm gonna tell you why it's a grep. Don't lose your patience, guys, and ask me how do you find out it's grep. So let me just first grep. So it's bin grep. All right. So now let's do that. So basically ls-la bin grep. This is grep. As you can see, it has the SUID bit set. Once you see this bit or permission on any binary, guys, it means that you can execute the binary as the owner of the file. Usually it is the root user. So once we see this on a binary, it means we can use that binary to gain privileges to the root user. But how do we find out that among all of these binaries, grep was the ultimate one? So how do you find out? It's basically we're gonna need to use the error and trial. So basically here we go to GTFO bins, and what we have to do, guys, you have to search these binaries one by one to find if there is a way to escalate the privileges using one of them with the SUID bit set. So if we search for su grep or ping. So ping, only hping. Ping doesn't have. Ping is on the list. Let's see where is ping. Ping is on the list, but ping doesn't have a method. It's not on the list here to abuse using sudo permissions. So basically, if we search for the grep, it is here, and SUID is listed as a method to abuse the binary and perform privileged escalation. So how do we do that? So basically with the grep, we can use this command, okay, to read the contents of any sensitive file. And that's how you're going to answer the other question. What's the payload you can use to read etc shadow with this SUID? If you remember, we were denied access to read the contents of this file, etc shadow. Why? Because we don't have permissions to do that. So now, with grep having the SUID bit set, we can abuse this, okay, and perform a privileged operation to read the contents of this file as we are given the permissions to do so. So if you go to GTFO bins, as you can see, we can have to execute this. Now you can, L file is a variable that you can set, optionally set, and assign the target file as a value to the variable here. But you don't have to do that. Just copy this and put the path to the file. As you can see, we were able to read the contents of the shadow file, and it contains the hash of the manager user up until here, and also contains the hash of the root user, as I guess. Let me see. No, it doesn't have. Okay, it has the manager. So this is the command. Bonus, port forwarding, automating scripts, and that's it, guys. So this is not all, guys. So basically there are more ways to perform local enumeration in order to later on do privilege escalation. You can check out the network connections, the processes, so on and so forth. So basically you can find these methods in this sheet or in this file if you are subscribed to the channel membership. So that was it, guys. I hope you found that useful, and I'm gonna see you later.